All right, so let us begin with Sylvia Hernandez Cuellar, who is going to represent the Diagnosis and Early Intervention Group. Come on up. And Marcos, thank you, Marcos.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. So my name is Sylvia, and
Marcos Aguilar.
And we were in the early intervention and diagnosis group. And so just to set the foundation for some of those that were not in that, that did not attend that breakout session, we are talking about the barriers of families from the beginning, from noticing that something is developmentally different with their children, and as they enter the navigation of services, all the barriers from that moment on, and then into accessing early intervention. And Marcos is going to share.
So, can everyone hear me? Okay. Okay. So some of the items that we discussed was raising awareness, right? And ensuring that medical practitioners who do see children on an annual basis have the fundamental understanding of when concerns are raised by families, that they take the appropriate procedures to ensure that that family knows who to go to afterwards, right? Oftentimes, families come in with an idea that there may be something wrong with their child. And if you have a family who's sort of in neglect, right, with those conditions or those possible diagnoses that the child may have, and they're told, no, there's nothing wrong with your child, that's sort of a breath of fresh air for them, right? And they kind of move on. Then 4 or 5 years later down the road, they're being told that now their child has a diagnosis. And by then it may be too late to make that progress and to have that growth for that child that they could have had if they were diagnosed appropriately within that first or second year. Now, something that was brought up during one of our discussions was a commercial that shares a different light to I don't know if it was autism specifically.
No, sorry. It was somebody shared that I guess the South Central Regional Center, they had a commercial that aired on like the daily news channel. Yeah. Oh, on Channel 1. And it was bringing light to the regional center. And it was reframed in a different way of like, this is not the end of your child's life. Like you have a diagnosis and, you know, sometimes it's like, say bye to all of these hopes and dreams, but instead it was reframed differently. And so the concept that Marcos is going to talk about is like bringing like an awareness campaign, right? Funded through different organizations. And one example was the commercial, but go ahead.
So we want to be able to raise awareness through maybe states and county funding to be able to provide awareness through social media and media that we all have access to on the tips of our finger, right? If we can have something that's as consistent as we all have seen those suicide prevention sort of awareness things through social media. And if we can make something like that as accessible for the various services, especially early on for early learners, I think it would make a big and huge impact for the families that are possibly going through something that they may not be aware of. Ongoing practitioner education as well, right? Things change all the time. My dad's a mechanic. I'm very proud of my father, who is a mechanic, and he goes through trainings on an annual basis with new cars, right? The new electronic systems that they have, and we should be doing the same for medical practitioners, right? And it shouldn't be encouraged; it should be requirements. Things change and things evolve consistently. So if we have to be required to attend trainings for maybe a new study or maybe a new service that's being provided, I think our medical practitioners will have more information and resources for families that are seeking that information and seeking that education. So I do think that should be mandated for all of us here who may be practicing to be a part of.
Just to add to that piece too, it's education in the form of like a pediatrician shouldn't just be checking off the milestones that a child is reaching or not. Something that was brought up is that culturally children present differently with different behaviors, and what may not be concerning to one pediatrician is concerning to a family. So we talk a lot about these culturally competent trainings, right? But it should be part of the education piece for these providers.
And I don't know if this is gonna be the last one, but who knows the process better than the families and the parents that go through the process? Employment for those parent advocates, to be a part of these medical offices, to be a part of these county offices, to guide families in accessing that environment that they're having a difficult time accessing. So.
What a lovely ring. That was great. All right, so we're gonna give people 1 minute to respond. Now, remember, all of these recommendations need to be centered in equity. So these were great recommendations, but I didn't hear specific outreach for underserved communities, even though I know that's where you were coming from. Both of you, very much so. All right, who would like to respond? You must be a self-advocate or a family member. There we go. Go ahead. You hold on. We're going to time you 1 minute. Go ahead.
I'm going to do it in 30 seconds.
All right.
That idea of hiring the families to be in the offices, and I disagree with you vehemently, that is culturally perfect, right? Because they'll be in the offices where those family communities are done.
What I meant to say is we need to make it explicit that it's in the same language from the same culture. So we just want the explicitness of that. Yes. I thought it was a great idea too. All right. And that was way less than 1 minute. Go ahead. Celine.
I agree. It's a great idea, and let's make it something we can do right now. Let's do it through the peer support partner program at the regional centers. Why can't the peer support partners be our liaison to these doctor offices?
Wow, you guys are amazing. You're keeping under your 1 minute. Nope.
I think families need to start advocating with medical schools in their areas to get training in medical education, because doctors literally get one class in one course through their entire medical school career about how to work with people with chronic disabilities and mental illness or a whole lot of other issues.
I'm proud of everybody.
I absolutely love everything about the idea. I think it's like just top notch all the way. The only thing I would add to that, and it's not to take away anything from it, but along the lines of the awareness campaign for early intervention, campaign for nonverbal at median, like campaigns for each level of autism, if you will, to take it to the next level. That's it.
Oh, there's one down there.
Thank you. Just in terms of medical practitioners, just getting in the mode of being proactive regarding reactive. I've had a lot of doctors tell me, just wait, just wait, just wait. And that's not the best approach.
Yeah, good point. And we're always relieved to hear that just wait, but it's not necessarily the right thing. All right. Okay. So let's move on. That was excellent. Thank you for that. Let's move on. So you're now diagnosed. First thing you get to is education now. Let's bring up Diana Pastora Carson and her team and Lisa Moscow. I just want, as they're walking up, I want to tell everybody that we know you've met a lot of folks and you've made a lot of friends. Well, we're not ending the party here. We're going across the street to Philippi's. Some of you miscorrectly call it Philippe's. It is actually correctly called Philippi's. It's across the street. Right after this, we're going to take over the whole restaurant. So please join us. Okay. Education.
Good afternoon, everyone. So we had two very robust conversations in our two sessions, and it was me, Diana Pastora Carson, and Lisa Moscow Barros, and we also had the lovely Nicole Voisard, who rocked it. Good job. and Darlene, who was supposed to be our note taker, who just brought so much to the party. So thank you. And thank you to all the people who were part of it. So in our morning session, you're gonna share. Oh, no. So just, no, she's fine.
Okay, sorry. Okay. Thanks for your patience. Okay, so the morning session, really great discussion. Came up with lots of amazing ideas, boiled them down to 3 key ideas. And the first one was around addressing the issue of general education teachers and administrators not being equipped to understand students with disabilities. And so to embed in, to literally have it legislated or perhaps have the California Teacher Commission embed in the certification process for general education teachers that they learn about special education and not just one class, but truly many classes and knowing how to be inclusive, learning what ableism is and becoming anti-ableist warriors themselves, presuming competence, all the things so that teachers can fully receive the students with disabilities in their general education classroom. 2, parent training at the school, ideally by having a more robust implementation of the community advisory committees, the CACs that are in every SELPA. So this would entail legislating more robust guidelines around how the CACs are run, what their capacity is, and ensuring that the CAC not only is being well supported by the school district, but also having groups at every school site that feed up to the CAC, similar to how DLAC or ELAC works with English language learners. That is the other piece. I feel like I'm forgetting something about that. So, and also that targeted school. So for those of you who know about local control accountability plans, they are based on targeted school populations, which currently are English language learners, foster youth, and Title I students. And that means that the local control accountability plan has to ensure that there are groups at every school site that address these targeted school populations and also have funding allocated for them. There was previously a movement afoot pre-pandemic to make special ed kids with disabilities, a targeted school population. And so by ensuring that they are identified as a targeted school population, then you have more robust accountability at every school site, because then you'll have parent groups required at every school site to lift up their concerns and organize and mobilize around students with disabilities. 3, let's collect data and do research on how much education funds are spent on due process. For example, I spoke with a group about how I recently issued a Public Records Act request to LAUSD about how much they had spent on attorney fees for both families and for themselves in due process. And they only gave me information for the past 3 years about how much they spent on reimbursing families on attorney fees. And that for the last 3 years, from 2020 to 2023, that was $30 million for, I don't know, 65,000, 70,000 kids in LAUSD. So maybe that money could be preemptively put into offering the school community more supports for students with disabilities. So data and research on, show me the money, how much are you spending on due process, and how can we actually reallocate those funds to where they should belong, which is in the classroom and with the kids.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, so for our afternoon session, we have 2 that we came up with.
We're sort of out of time. So can you say it in 10 seconds?
Yeah, so 1, development and accountability to implement the IEP using an outside advocate or agency with no conflict of interest. in order to have robust oversight. And then the second one is easy, smaller inclusive classroom sizes.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Yes, now you're getting your reality check. Okay. All right. Who would like to respond, self-advocate or family member? On any of those recommendations, raise your hand. There's one way back there.
I'm gonna be really quick. On the first one, I think that we also need to include implicit and subconscious bias in the teachers' trainings, because I think that personally that affects a lot of what teachers, gen ed teachers do around students with disabilities.
Excellent.
And then when you layer on top of that, people of color, it's even more biased. Others, everyone thinks this is the greatest thing ever, and it's like. All right, I'll pose a question then. Okay, we have somebody. Okay, great.
Yo pienso que un punto muy importante aquí debería de ser que los distritos contraten maestros con credenciales y empatía hacia nuestros hijos. También que los maestros tomen clases para poder hacer unas metas específicas para nuestros hijos, porque desafortunadamente yo llevo 5 años enseñando a cada uno de los maestros que le empieza a dar clases, vienen maestros nuevos y ninguno sabe hacer una meta donde se pueda medir el progreso de mi hijo. Y más que nada, tener a los padres, los maestros empatía hacia nuestros hijos, conocer a nuestros hijos y conocer cómo pueden tener un avance académico. No estancar a nuestros hijos allí año con año sin tener un progreso. Gracias.
Look at how much you can say in 1 minute.
I think an important point is that districts need to hire accredited teachers and also that have empathy. In the classes, what happens with teachers is like they don't know how to do goals for our kids. For the last 5 years, every single teacher of my child, I've had to teach them about the goals and how to measure advance. So teachers need to have empathy, but also they need to understand how our kids can advance academically instead of just leaving them stuck in the same.
We have one more over here.
I just want to make a remark about, to your point, I understand that you guys did talk about getting better interpreters for, the language barrier that exists, right? That's really important. But I also think it's important that when you get in the system, there should be some kind of sit down with families and say, this is the process. We speak a different language. And that's the only way you're going to get what you want when it comes to goals and objectives, or when it gets to the IEP, right? You have to speak that language. If you don't speak that language, you're not going to get the outcomes that you want. It's taken our family a lifetime to figure that out. It shouldn't have to be that way. So school districts and at the regional center level, they should also teach you that language before you engage into a meeting to determine what services and supports your loved one will receive.
And to challenge my sister Elizabeth, you shouldn't have to speak a language to get services. So people have got to, we've got to be able to get them even if we're not understanding the process. And so it's a combination of the two. Oh, a last one?
One
Do we
more
have-
over here.
Okay, one more real quick.
Judy,
Oh,
we
wait.
have one over here.
Oh, we have one over here. Okay.
I'm gonna say in Spanish. Todo lo que hagamos y todos los planes no van a ser posibles si no hay una agencia afuera del centro regional y de la escuela que se aseguren que los servicios se van a dar o de acuerdo a lo que dicen. Ese es mi comentario. Son una agencia afuera del centro regional, de la escuela, que se asegure que los servicios se den como deben de hacer.
One thing that would make all this possible is that there needs to be an agency that's outside of regional center and outside of the schools that ensures that the services are properly provided, an outside agency overseeing, make sure that the services are provided properly.
Okay, final one up back there.
In addition to creating a space for educators to have more empathy, I would also think maybe having a space for educators to also learn the language and creating a safe space for individuals with disabilities. So that way it's not just you're disrupting the classrooms and you put the teachers in a position where they're not able to provide that level of care and or education. So just thinking about that too within the school systems.
Excellent point. Thank you, education folks. Thank you, Lisa and Diana. Okay, now we're going to talk about regional centers, and we have who coming up, Fernando and Jesse? All three of you? You can just use your mic there if you want.
I'll just use something.
Okay, okay.
And then, well, actually, we can easily say that all the issues and challenges that we're finding in the school system are replicated within the regional center system. And when we had their two sessions, as you can see on the board, the first session of the first 2 pages on my left, and then to the right of, or to the left of Dr. Weller and William, there are the second sessions. And, you know, Judy, you said that we needed to prioritize with about 50 recommendations, and that's impossible because each one is important. Now, what we can do is break them down into not categories, if you will, and then what can be implemented immediately, what's practical that can immediately be done. And then, of course, all of the others have to then be put into some kind of time frame. But towards the end of our second session, Araceli approached me and she delivered the golden bullet there saying, here's what I think you should do. And here's my recommendation. She says, so what we need to do is stop having individuals seek out the regional center system and its services. What you need to do is have the regional center system seek out the individual and follow that individual throughout their whole journey as they have the needs and so forth. To me, that makes a lot of sense. So all of these issues that you see on the wall here would fall in alignment with that type of structure. And then she came out and said as well, she says, but in order for that to be successful, you need to have a third party, unbiased individual entity that helps facilitate that, similar to what we heard back of here from Veronica. So those are, I believe, that some of the priorities or the ways that we can capture these priorities as they pertain to equity and equality. And now hand it over to Dr. Weller and then William, who also have a couple of comments.
Give it a sec.
Oh, there we go. Okay, third time today. I just start talking, it's not on. I think you captured it. The theme that I took away from our work groups today, I got a sense that individuals in the room with us want change. And that's clear for regional center. There's a lot of themes when you look on the posters up here around oversight, accountability, transparency. And so a lot of questions were coming in around what would it look like to have another regional center? What would it look like to have a centralized regional center system that wasn't separated by 21 different centers, going to themes around our interactions with individuals on behalf of regional centers, themes of respect, empathy and kindness came up a lot in our discussions. And so I think bringing it back to equity and thinking about inclusion, that were some of my takeaways from the conversation, how we can continue to, the word on here is reform, change, evolve, transform, whatever that looks like, to have more equitable, inclusive practices across the board that can be measured was the other area that came up as well.
Thank you. Thank you. William?
We have discussed services, equity, and accountability. What we would like to prioritize is implementation and timeliness. Does the IPP template have a spot for barriers and defined timelines with actionable consequences? An IPP service offer developed to bring equity is only as good as its implementation.
Thank you, William. So one of the things, one of the ideas that jumped out at me that I think talks to a lot of the issues that we talked about, respect, empathy, understanding, embracing, jobs, and the ability to have someone who understands you, was in one of the biggest challenges that we hear back from the system with this is we don't have enough service coordinators. The workload that coordinators have right now is just too heavy to carry. So we talked about the ability to change the criteria of hiring these service coordinators to individuals with lived experience. And that way, you not only have a robust pool in which to hire from, but you have individuals who understand that individuals that they're supposed to provide the service for. I think it'll touch bases on a lot of the issues that you see on equity and equality within the regional center system here. So with that, can we go
You
into
were
our speed
under
run?
5 minutes.
Okay. Oh, can we talk some more?
8 seconds on. Thank you. Those were great. And they were hugely attended. If you did not come to the regional center one, they were hugely attended, and hopefully people, okay, so we have a respondent, a reality check respondent.
I'm part of South Central Regional Center and have been a parent there for 16 years. And I think a couple things I heard are like an overarching theme is that people don't really understand how to navigate the system at the regional center. And I feel like the regional centers have tried to come out and answer that by putting together parent navigators, family empowerment centers, webinars. I use those resources and they really help me in navigating. In terms of the cultural sensitivity, they're in Spanish and in English. And South Central also has those commercials, I think, in Spanish and English that raise awareness. So I just wanted to say that in terms of a solution, there are some solutions out there that you could do from the comfort of your own home.
Next, would you like to respond or speak? Sandy.
Mi nombre es Sandy Topete, lo voy a decir en español, ojalá y lo puedan traducir correctamente, porque sí hay muchas formas que los centros regionales se quieren comunicar y quieren pasar la información, pero no la pasan completa. Esconden lo que quieren y dicen solo lo que quieren. Entonces, para yo poder tener acceso a ese servicio, tengo que aprender la ley Lanterman como abogada. Yo no sé ni siquiera hablar perfectamente el inglés, pero lo tengo que aprender. Entonces, esas cosas de los programas que ponen como Parent Mentors, sí, ayudan, pero no ayudan porque no explican, no avanzan, solo le ponen ahí las cosas y uno lo tiene que averiguar. Y es triste porque los programas que tenemos nosotros aquí como ICC, sí explica la verdad, sí les dice cómo avanzar. Nosotras como casi coordinadoras, porque caminamos con ellos de la mano, así debería de ser la coordinadora, porque está coordinando servicios. Si no coordina servicios, ¿por qué está ahí? Si no está haciendo el trabajo de coordinadora. Gracias.
Hi, I'm Sandy Topete, and I hope that this is interpreted correctly. So yes, the regional center has ways that they want to communicate information to us, but it's often incomplete. They had what they want to say, and they only say what they want to say. And so for me to be able to access as an advocate, I got to learn the Lanternman law. And if it takes for me to learn English perfectly, that's what it's going to take. And you know what? Yes, there are parent navigators, but they don't always explain things fully. They just kind of give you things and you got to figure it out on your own. In the programs that we have at ICC, they truly explain you how to go about it. It's almost like we're service coordinators. And actually, the role of service coordinators is coordinate services. If they don't, then what's the point of that role?
Thank you. Okay, we're only gonna have time for about 2 more folks, okay? And if there's a self-advocate who wants to speak, we prioritize self-advocates.
My policies do not let the regional center lead you. You guide the regional center.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you. Gilda, there's a person way back there.
Oh, there's one right here.
Well, this is a self-advocate, so
Oh,
I
okay.
want to make sure that she gets to speak.
Hold on.
Thank you. Hi, I am a advocate for the regional center. It's better to go in person, better by phone, no better than doing it on your computer or anything else. Because if the person is really wants to know you, it's better for you to go in person, especially with your child. Because if they see your child, they're going to understand that you need their help for everything else.
All right, so our last one was over here. Wait, ICC already went.
Yo solo quiero agradecer a Yuremar por invitarnos a este evento y también decir que cada uno de los directores de los centros regionales deberían estar aquí, venir a estas conferencias, porque no es justo que todas las piedras le están cayendo a nuestro director, el doctor Weller.
Everybody's laughing and I'm a loser and I don't speak Spanish.
I would like to thank Judy Mark for the invitation to this event. And I think that all regional center directors should be here because it feels like all the stones are falling unfairly on my director here, Dr. Weller.
How much did you pay her to come here today? We also had Gloria Wong, who was the executive director of East Los Angeles Regional Center, which is great. We are actually out of time on this one, so we're gonna keep going. Okay, our next one was my personal, in my heart topic, the immigration and language access. Ida, where are you? There you are. Okay, Ida and Catherine.
Okay, so in our both sessions, we chose 4 different topics: education, trust, safety, and language access. And under education, providing community training and outreach, training leaders of the community in their own language, churches, other faith-based organizations, community centers, and creating a train the trainer model. Developing leaders in the community, which leads to trust and bridging the 2 different attorneys, the disability attorney and immigration attorney, to work together. You want to say something about that, what you do?
Oh, sure. Yeah, not only to work together, but to train each other on their expertise, right? So that disability organizations, including regional centers, understand the immigration laws and are able to communicate that. And then also that the disability rights groups, the regional centers, are training our immigration attorneys and advocates to work with disabled populations, right? And disabled families.
And also building trust. The biggest thing is confidentiality and cultural sensitivity, making regional centers, school districts, preschools, keep the immigration status of families confidential. That way, families feel safe to take their kids and get services, enroll in school systems, and et cetera. Providing safety, preventing deportation, and continuing service for families, making sure humanitarian parole, which protects parents with disabled children, doesn't go away, especially in today's world, in our new future. And under language access, using simple language, making it accessible to all, considering different dialects. And those are the key points that we came up with. Did I leave anything else? Plain language, yeah.
All right, you ready for your reality check?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Okay, who would like to make comments on those recommendations? This was a really great session. We have somebody way down there? Is that Valerio? Yes. One of DVU's illustrious board members.
Hi, good afternoon. Valerio Baca here. I just have a question about immigration. What is the possibility for some of us who don't have the luxury to have a green card as of right now? What can we do, or what can you do to help us out to get one, so we don't get deported and they can once live a decent life in the US?
Yeah, thank you for this question. Well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge the very real fear, especially after this election. I don't think that they will be able to deport everyone, right? Some people will get deported, but many people will live in fear of deportation. So that's really real, and I want to acknowledge that. One thing, I'll let you speak right now, sorry. I'll just say my one thing. A lot of people come to me asking for recommendations of attorneys, and there are a lot of really great immigration nonprofits that provide low fee or no fee for their immigration services. I have a lot of immigration attorney friends in those nonprofits, and right now they already are overworked. They have really big caseloads. So making sure that, that we're working to give them more resources to be able to take on more loads is going to be critical. And then also in our session, we heard from folks who pay a lot of money, and I know a lot of people do, for immigration attorneys, and making sure that those attorneys that they're paying, again, are good attorneys, providing the right information and giving fair advocacy.
Thank you. Okay, so in the same theme, and great question, Valeria, we already know that trust is a huge issue within the system already. And we've already had experience with the public charge and other things that where we encourage people to trust the system, and because they have the right to do so. And as you just mentioned, that's not guaranteed anymore. So to be proactive in anticipation of what's to come, how can we position ourselves? In a lot of people, most people can't afford immigration attorneys. A lot of people don't know pathways to getting the green cards. What can we do today to prepare ourselves for what may be coming down the pipe?
I thought you were going to provide a solution. I'll ask another question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Solutions are hard here.
Yeah, I hear you. We're working on this. Yes. I think a lot of us, I'm a director of a disability rights organization who tries to do education with immigration attorneys. I'm not an immigration attorney myself. I will say a lot of us are freaking out this week, but starting on Monday, we're getting back to work and we're responding to a lot of these questions. And like you said, right? Like we've been through the Trump administration before, and we had successes in pushing back and suing them because a lot of what they propose is unconstitutional, right? So we will do that. We are a big coalition. We got to make sure that, when we ask for you to come to the table, like you are now, you're here and you're working with us to push back. Yeah. We keep fighting.
Sí, bueno, buenas tardes. Yo quería en el tema de inmigración, Westside Regional Center sí tiene abogados de inmigración y le ha ayudado a muchas familias a arreglar su estatus y buscan la manera, estudian el caso para ver cuál es la vía posible de que esas familias puedan arreglar su estatus migratorio. Deberían de copiarse de Westside también muchos centros de aplicar la misma política, pero también Westside debería mejorar un poquito porque no sé si es que no conocen, los coordinadores de servicio no conocen el servicio porque no lo ofrecen a las familias, aunque las familias pregunten, le dicen que no existen. Entonces, está muy bien ahí, tienen el servicio, pero deberían de dar a conocer un poco más que existe o a los coordinadores, porque los coordinadores según no saben. Y otros centros regionales que aporten, que hagan la misma política, que la agarren, porque es un buen servicio para muchas familias.
Good afternoon. Regarding immigration, so Westside Regional Center actually offers immigration attorney services, and they have helped people fix their status. It's something that have helped families, and probably other regional centers should apply the same policy. But I think something that could be improved is that perhaps service coordinators don't know about the service because families ask about it, and then they say they don't know about it, but it actually exists. So probably more training for service coordinators, but probably other regional centers should copy this from Westside.
This is a personal hot button for me. I just wanted to share a couple of things that I've heard in the last couple of days. First, the ACLU is all over this. They have a master plan that they're going to be putting into action. So if you're not already familiar with their stuff, check it out. Perhaps become a member. Now would be a good time. They talked about how in the last administration, they put a lot of stuff in the courts and they were able to block a lot of stuff, but that in the end of the day, it was people like us who protested that stopped Trump. And so he said we should all be ready to mobilize and to put all of our, emotions and faces into the picture because we're so much bigger than him. We will defeat this. He also pointed out that this bullshit number of 11 million or whatever that's been thrown around, there's not enough staff in the country to do 1/1000th of that. So don't be scared by that number and just be prepared to mobilize.
Thank you so much. We're going to have to move on to the next one. Thank you. That was amazing. And so let's bring up primary and preventative care, Dr. Michelle Catanzaro.
Hey, everybody. So I'll start by saying kind of the principles that we thought about to look at equity were to focus on providers already serving underserved populations as our first place for intervention so that we're lifting the folks who are most vulnerable first. And secondly, that it's really important to collect data and to show outcomes. And that data needs to be able to be disaggregated by disability status as well as race and ethnicity and other underserved populations. So our proposals, number one, this is a theme for today, I think, is around education. This time around medical education and dental education at all levels. So in medical and dental schools, in training programs, and in continuing education, the focus should be on reducing implicit bias and disability justice, because really what we need is a culture shift in medicine and dentistry that that the people who show up in your office, it is your responsibility to provide excellent care for, not that they need to come in and advocate for themselves or tell you what they need. It's your responsibility to serve the people in front of you. If it seems inconvenient to you, that's not an answer. You don't get to stop there. You have to figure out how to do your job. So that shift has to happen. And along with that comes a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of education, but mostly it's a culture shift. Secondly, accessibility. There should be clinic licensure should require accessible medical equipment and accessible dental equipment. Full stop. We should require federally qualified health centers to report the health status of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We have to report health outcomes divided by race and ethnicity, and on multiple levels. IDD should be another one of those areas that are reported that then drives improvement. And also when you see that gap, it encourages people to reduce those gaps in care and provides potential streams of funding to reduce those gaps in care. Number 4, require DDS to identify and disseminate best practices. So things like, we heard about a very cool dental program at one of the regional centers who's doing dental desensitization and a huge education program. Very cool thing. Why did most of the regional centers in the room have no idea this existed? When there are best practices out there, DDS should be responsible for identifying and distributing them to others. 5, require regional centers to have dental coordinators as a floor. Start there. This is a really difficult to access service, and having a dental coordinator at every regional center would help. Lastly, we need to be doing outreach to communities that are underserved, and with that outreach, support for navigating the complicated systems. Though I agree, the real focus is, how do we make these systems less complicated to navigate? I don't want to keep putting effort into how do we hold people's hands through these systems. It doesn't have to be this hard. It doesn't have to be this hard.
That sounds amazing.
Oh, I have one more. Do I have a
Oh, yes,
second?
you do.
Okay. This was very cool and different than everything else I talked about. So maybe we create a glossy business plan for dental practices that shows how to serve people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and make money doing it. There's tons of need out there. And then we use our families to advocate to dentists in their communities to start these programs in the communities where they live.
Can I just say that Michelle is a doctor at the Achievable Clinic, and my son goes to this clinic, and it's an amazing place. And that also needs to be we talked about the dental clinics, but Achievable Clinic needs to be replicated around the state as well. Okay, feedback on healthcare.
I just love her ideas, because as a mother of 2 kids with special needs and adult, it's so hard for me to get her into a clinic. They only have 1 clinic in Rancho Los Amigos and I have 2 years waiting. So if the regional centers will provide like something for them not to wait 2 years for them to go through it, that would be a blessing for our families. So they have a place safe to go, so they don't get tied up. They just have a medical team to take care of other needs at once. And it will save time, life, and a lot of medical problems that will come in a long term. Thank you for your ideas.
Hi, great ideas, thank you. Like you said, it should not be that complicated, but I'm a mother of a child with multiple medical needs, from hydrocephalus to cerebral palsy, hemiplegia, dyslexia, scoliosis, autism, etc. But in most of the medical needs that he has, he cannot even go to the dentist, at least he goes to the neurologist. And the neurologist has to approve it. And then even some dentists cannot even take him in if I don't get this paperwork. So for my son to go see a dentist, it takes from a year to maybe a year and a half, if I'm lucky. So what I'm trying to say with this is, it has to be like a team within the same, like Achievable, for instance, where the medical is there, where you can see him and give the okay for him to have immediate attention when it comes to the dentist. So maybe that's a recommendation for those clients who have multiple medical needs.
Perfect. I mean, the theme around dentistry was really
We have one more.
compelling. I mean, I thought it was going to be mostly about healthcare, but everybody was talking about the lack of access to dental care for our community.
Hi, my name is German Cervantes. I'm from Dinuba and I'm with Central Valley Regional Center. And I was just at the breakout session with that has to do with healthcare and dental plans. So for me, I already have access to dental services, and I'm also along with Medicare or Medi-Cal, and I'm also financially secured through Social Security under the disability benefit. So if you need somebody that already has access to dental care or dental health plan, you can count on me for help.
Thanks. Awesome. I mean, for me, I don't see any hand raised, but you know, dental care is critical, and so many people are having to put their family members or themselves under general anesthesia just to get dental care, and to me, that's unacceptable. It's very risky and it's unacceptable, and we have to figure out a better way. Okay, so let's move on. Oh yeah, go, please.
Sorry, I just want to honor my group by saying this did come up in our group too, about the need for medically complex adults. In the pediatric world, it's a lot more common to have integrated groups that care for particular things. You can get a lot done at once. It doesn't really exist for adult in the adult system. And so that was a recommendation of the group, that there be more integrated practices for people, especially medically complex people.
Oh, that's great. I love it. Okay, we're going to move on to our final one, and we're almost out of here, going to Filippi's, having pie and pizza and sandwiches. Okay, this is the last group, is the mental health crisis intervention support. Our lead facilitator, Hector Manuel Ramirez, got the stomach flu and couldn't come, and he was very sad, and he would have added a lot. So we really appreciate Will and Gwen filling in, so come on up.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Dr. Gwen, for being a great facilitator. I want to thank our note takers, Emma and Nina, and certainly everybody who attended our sessions and contributed to these ideas. We talked about two main themes around crisis. We talked about prevention. What can we do to stop the crises from happening in the first place? And when we talked about things like, what do we do when we're in a crisis? So those are the two things we talked about. We talked about housing. Crises happen when people don't have a stable place that they can call home, right? So maybe if we can fix the housing crisis in California, we can do something about the mental health crisis. Now, I'm not going to say we have solutions to that. We don't, right? But we did want to call out housing as a driver. What else did we talk about? We talked about, this is one of my favorite topics, communication supports. Crises happen when people don't have access to communication, when they can't be heard and understood by the world around them, when they're in pain, what they want, if they're feeling sick, or even who they love. They can't communicate with the world around them. That drives frustration and it drives crises. We see behavior plans that say behaviors of communication. And we have a lot of behavioral experts that come into the field, right? And say how do we work with the behaviors? And that seems to be funded often and early, and that's good and it's fine. But then we don't see, well, what about the communication supports? What about the AAC? What about the technology? So how are we also making sure from early ages that people are getting both the behavioral and access to communication supports as well? Fill that gap, maybe we're preventing some of the crises down the road. Other things around prevention, we talked about training. We talked about we need to do more training to law enforcement and to police officers. And that's important, right? Because like it or not, police are going to show up. We may spend all the money in the world, right, to try to prevent that from happening, but it's going to happen. So how do we do better training, and who does that training? And the training needs to be done also by people who are most impacted, people served by our systems, that are most affected by police interactions and let's be real, police violence. We also talked about training people, what's it like to interact with a police officer, and where are the do's and don'ts? So those are some of the ideas around prevention we talked about. We also spent a lot of time talking about the role of the regional center in a crisis. And somebody said something like, crisis and mobile crisis support is an authorized service. What do you mean by that? You have to get pre-approved for it. Pre-approved or is that how it works? When people are in crisis, they're in crisis, they need the support now, right? Right, so exactly. So we talked about there are some things that are so important in this world that you shouldn't need pre-approval to get them. People go in crisis, and that happens to everybody, and there should be immediate access to that service, right? Because there are some things that you shouldn't have to ask for. And Judy, we talk about equity, right? So equity means removing barriers to services, right? The more barriers you put in place between the person and the service, the more red tape, the more bureaucracy, the more you need to prove that you need the service, people are going to start falling through those cracks and giving up. That's going to impact people who speak a different language, right? It's going to impact people that maybe just don't have time for all that because they're busy struggling or trying to figure out how to work, right? So that's an equity issue, removing barriers that stand in between what people need and what they get. And I'd say the same thing about communication supports. There are some things that are so important in this world that people shouldn't have to ask for them. So access to crisis services. Then we also talked about when people get authorized crisis services, they call up the crisis hotline and they're told, well, what's after hours? Like, we'll come over tomorrow. Or is it we're closed on the weekend? Timeliness, like what's it going to do for somebody if they don't get access to those crisis services the following Monday? So they need to be available when people need them. And then we had a few comments around, so now we've got crisis services in the home. Gosh, these staff, like they're here, but they don't know what they're doing. I know more than them. So we talked about the need for better training and support for crisis professionals too. But then someone made a comment, it's like, wait a minute, why is it up to the regional center about what my crisis supports look like? What about self-determination? How can we make it self-determination a more effective model for crisis intervention? Because if people can choose and have more choice and control over their supports and who provides them and how much they get paid. Is that me? Am I out of time? That was loud. Am I gonna get the hook? Give people more choices over their supports and who receives them. That's gonna make things better for people too. We have one more point that's a little bit more meta, a bigger picture. Someone said the IDD community is having all these conversations around what crisis prevention means. And we talk about access to housing, and we talk about police violence and police intervention and what that means. And we're talking about all these things. And I'm also in spaces for mental health community, and they're talking about these things too. And can we just talk about it together? We may not agree on everything, but we're going to find common ground. And especially now, today, we need to find ways to be together and advocate together in community with each other across all disability groups, across all people that are going to be most impacted by the changes that are coming. We just talked about some of those changes that might be coming. So we need to get out of the silos with our advocacy and coming up with solutions and start working together more and working more intersectionality. And that cuts across all of the recommendations too. So that's what we got.
That's great. All right. Who wants to respond? Mental health stuff. Fernando has his hand up.
I'll go ahead.
Yeah, so we have Fernando, and then after Fernando, we have a hand
Yeah,
up.
and I apologize because I know that we will give everybody an opportunity, but this is something that's really near and dear to my heart, especially after what we experienced with Isaías Cervantes. But police officers have what they call qualified immunity, meaning that you can't sue them, that they're not going to be held liable for using deadly force in situations like with what we had with Isaías. I think that police officers should have that qualified immunity removed when they're interacting with our community. So I think that's one thing. We can't stop them from interacting with our community, but we could kind of put some filters on there. So that's the first step of several others.
Who had, somebody had, oh, it's way back there. We are running on time. I am so proud of everybody. My staff did not believe in me that we could get this done in time. I don't think I believed in myself, but go ahead.
Hi, I'm a friend of the actress Vanessa Marquez, who was shot 19 times during a wellness call in 2018. And her friends, her actor friends, and everybody sought and tried to get services for her. And And it was a friend of hers who called because she was having problems. She was just a hoarder and she was having problems with a particular physical problem, 80 pounds, only 5'2", and by the end of it, she was dead. So this is a very specific crisis intervention. In terms of to put to the top of the list, as soon as a family or a friend says something, there needs to be an immediate response. And I remember the time I tried to call, what I got was 27 questions trying to qualify. Her friend Minerva also called and she got the list of 27 questions and then why you couldn't. So yeah, this is a deadly problem of just because it wasn't that nobody called for her, there were a lot of people who called. So that's my response.
Thank you. We're going to let Julie have the last word.
Well, once again, thank you, Judy and DVU, for doing this for all of us to give us an opportunity to be heard. When you talk about communication, it's not always about using your words. I happen to be a speech pathologist, and communication comes in many forms. It can become a behavior, it become a cry or a meltdown. That's communication. I think what we really have to realize is that it's not that our community is not communicating our need. Once again, we're not being heard. And if we truly look about what autism is or disability is, that if we see anxiety and depression as a symptom of how we are not heard, that anxiety can be a cause of the systemic or emotional abuse of our families. I think that's something very important to think about. I struggled for a long time with my autism, and the symptoms was anxiety. The symptom was depression. The symptom was being suicidal, taking myself to the ER because my husband, my colleagues won't recognize when I tell them that I am not well. When I go to a 504 plan and say, I am no longer allowing them to mentally abuse my family and being pulled out on a stretcher to be 5150, that is abuse of the system. And I think we just have to recognize that everybody in this room is very articulate, whether we are verbal, whether we're using ARC, we are communicating. We are not being heard and thereby struggling with our mental health. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Well, that was a really amazing session. I love so many of these recommendations that came out, and what we promise is we've recorded every single session and we have all the notes from the sessions, and we have a professional writing team that are going to be looking at what was discussed today and writing up a report. And this report we hope to be delivering to legislators, to the governor, to our members of Congress, and to other policymakers, the administration, to really try to implement many of these recommendations. But what we also commit to you is that we're not going to wait until this report is done. My staff doesn't know this yet, but I'm hoping within the next couple of weeks that we will be having a webinar online to talk about the impact of the elections on people with disabilities, particularly those in California. And we will stay in touch with all of you, and we hope you'll stay in touch with us. So I want to thank you for being here today, but I also want to give a special thank you to our staff. Could our staff come up here? Our amazing DVU staff, get up here. I see you in the back. Gilda, stand up, get over here. Gilda led this amazing conference, and Fidelia, probably everybody has met Fidelia. She has led all of the administrative and planning pieces of this conference. It was a giant lift for everybody. And I would just want to thank our amazing staff for all your hard work. Some of our staff had to leave because they came here from many hours away. And so it is such an honor to be able to work with you all every day. And thank you to all of the speakers and the co-facilitators and our amazing ambassadors and everybody who came here today. And I'm going to leave it up to Gilda for the final words.
I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here, all the self-advocates, family members, sponsors, attendees, our wonderful staff who helped out today, especially Fidelia. Thank you so much. I just want to thank everyone. And if you are not part of our DVU mailing list, you will be after this conference. And we're going to be coming out with our report, the recommendations, and there's a QR code, and I'll see everyone at Flippies.